The smoke hits me first, acrid and thick, curling up from the red brick townhouse like a living thing reaching for the October sky. I stop on the sidewalk, grocery bags dangling from both hands, oranges and bread and the pasta I was planning to cook for dinner tonight suddenly irrelevant. Black clouds pour from a second-floor window, and beneath the wail of distant sirens, I hear something that makes my blood freeze. Crying. Children crying. High-pitched and terrified, the sound cuts through everything, through reason and self-preservation, and the sensible voice in my head that says, "Wait for the fire department. They will be here in minutes." But minutes might be too long. I drop the bags, apples rolling into the street, and I am running before I decide to run. The front door is hot when I slam my shoulder against it, the handle searing my palm even through my sleeve. Inside, the world becomes hell. Smoke so thick I cannot see 3 feet ahead, heat that steals the air from my lungs, the roar of flames somewhere above. I pull my scarf over my mouth and drop low where the air is clearer. The stairs are to my left, and I take them 2 at a time, hand trailing the wall. The crying is louder now, piercing through the chaos. Second door on the right, something in me knows this without knowing how. I shoulder it open and find them. 2 children, maybe 4 years old, huddled together in the corner of a bedroom. Twins, identical in their terror, soot-streaked faces and wide eyes that lock onto me like I am salvation itself. There is no time for gentleness. I run to the bathroom, drench 2 towels in the sink, wrap one around each child. They are small but solid. Warm bodies that I hoist onto my hips, one on each side. The girl wraps her arms around my neck in a chokehold of pure fear. The boy buries his face against my shoulder. The trip down is a nightmare of heat and smoke and collapsing ceiling tiles that miss us by inches. A beam falls across the bottom of the stairs, and I have to jump over it, landing hard, pain shooting through my ankle. But I do not stop. Cannot stop. The front door is an inferno now, so I run through the kitchen, out the back, around the side of the house. The front lawn seems impossibly far and impossibly green, and I collapse onto it, just as my legs give out entirely, the children still clutched against me. Fire trucks are screaming around the corner. The twins are sobbing into my shirt, their small hands fisted in my jacket, and I hold them and gasp for air and wonder distantly if I am going to vomit. Then I hear it, tires squealing, a vehicle stopping with violent abruptness. I look up through watering eyes and see a black SUV, sleek and expensive, completely out of place on this ordinary street. The driver door opens and a man emerges, and even through my smoke-blurred vision, I register the sharp lines of an expensive suit, the kind of presence that commands attention without trying. He sees the children and his face transforms, terror giving way to relief so profound it is almost painful to witness. Then his eyes find mine. The moment stretches, suspended in smoke and sirens and the pounding of my own heart. His gaze is intense, assessing, dangerous in a way I cannot articulate. Something passes between us, recognition without knowing, a hook setting deep. I do not know who he is, but I suddenly understand that everything just changed. Now please take a moment and subscribe to our channel and comment where you are watching from and what time is it. It is always fascinating to see where these stories get all around the world. Thank you. He drops to his knees in front of me on the grass, and the sight of this man in his expensive suit kneeling in the dirt jolts something in my chest. His hands move over the children with frantic precision, checking limbs and faces and breathing, his fingers trembling so badly I can see the shake from where I sit. The girl, dark curls matted with soot, whimpers and burrows deeper against my shoulder. The boy does the same on my other side. Their small bodies are furnaces against me, hot from the fire and fear, and I tighten my arms around them even as my lungs scream for clean air. The man looks up at me suddenly, his eyes a shade of gray that cuts like steel. And when he speaks, his voice is hard enough to bruise. Who are you? Not a question, a demand. What were you doing here? The accusation in his tone makes me flinch, and I cough before I can answer, my throat raw as torn fabric. I was walking home, I manage, just passing by. I heard them crying. His jaw clenches, a muscle jumping beneath skin that looks like it has never seen anything as common as doubt. And he stands in one fluid movement that speaks of violence barely leashed. Paramedics approach with a stretcher and equipment, their voices professionally calm, and when they reach for the children, both twins scream. The sound is piercing, animal z, and their grips on my jacket become desperate claws that dig through the fabric to skin. I make soothing sounds I do not think about, automatic teacher responses, and the paramedics exchange glances with the man who is clearly the father. He watches me with an intensity that makes my skin prickle, like I am a puzzle he cannot solve, or a threat he cannot yet identify. Other men in dark suits materialize around us, forming a perimeter that feels more like containment than protection, and I catch fragments of their low-voiced conversation. Safe house is burned, one says. Deliberate accelerant, says another. Someone knew they were there. The father's expression does not change, but something behind his eyes goes cold and flat. Something that makes me understand on an instinctual level that this man is dangerous in ways I have never encountered. He looks at me again, and this time the study is methodical, like he is memorizing every feature of my face for purposes I cannot begin to guess. Marcus, he says without looking away from me. Get her information, full background. I want everything in an hour. I try to protest, try to say I need to go home. I have groceries spoiling on the sidewalk, and a roommate expecting me, and a life that does not include whatever this is. But when I move to stand, my legs betray me completely. The adrenaline is crashing, my body remembering the heat and smoke and terror, and I pitch forward. He catches me before I hit the ground, his hands firm on my arms, and the touch sends electricity racing up my nerve endings despite the circumstances, despite everything. His face is inches from mine, and I see things I should not be able to see in a stranger's eyes. Fear and relief, and something darker, something calculating. You are coming with us, he says, and it is not a request, until I know exactly who you are and why you were in that house. I protest, even as his hand closes around my upper arm, gentle, but completely immovable, steering me toward the black SUV where one of his men holds the door open like this is perfectly normal, like people get kidnapped on suburban streets every day. I am not a threat, I say, and my voice comes out hoarse from the smoke, raw and smaller than I want it to be. I am just a teacher. I was walking home. I happened to be in the right place. His response is cold enough to frost the air between us. There are no coincidences in my world, Miss Whitmore. The use of my name startles me because I never gave it to him. And then I remember the paramedics took my information, or maybe one of his suited men went through my purse, and the violation of that makes my skin crawl. The twins are already in the vehicle, buckled into car seats that appeared from somewhere, and when the girl sees me, she reaches out her small hands and makes a sound of pure need that bypasses every self-preservation instinct I possess. I climb in because what choice do I have? These children are traumatized and clinging to me like I am the only solid thing in their universe. And the man who is clearly their father slides in beside me while two more security personnel take the front seats. The door closes with an expensive solid thunk that sounds like a prison cell locking. We drive in silence, broken only by the twins' hitching breaths, their small bodies pressed against me from both sides, and I watch through tinted windows as the city gives way to suburbs and then to countryside I do not recognize. Stone walls appear, high and topped with something that might be decorative ironwork, or might be something more sinister, and then gates that swing open at our approach, heavy and automated, and utterly final. The estate beyond is massive, a mansion that belongs in magazines about people whose lives are nothing like mine, all old brick and manicured grounds, and the kind of wealth that does not announce itself because it does not have to. My fear, which had been dampened by adrenaline and purpose, comes roaring back. What have I walked into? What world is this where men in suits carry guns in shoulder holsters I can now see when their jackets shift, where a burning building is called a safe house and compromise means someone new? Inside the mansion, the twins refuse to let go of my hands even when a doctor appears with a medical bag and a kind, professional face. I end up sitting on a leather sofa worth more than 6 months of my rent while he examines Sophie and Lucas, checking their vitals and listening to their lungs and shining lights in their eyes. And through it all, their fingers are laced with mine, sticky and tight and desperate. The father watches from the doorway, phone pressed to his ear, and I catch fragments that chill my blood. Colburn made his move, he says. Retaliation for the port seizure. We need to know how he found them. Who talked, and I want tracking on everyone who had access to that location. When he ends the call and returns to us, his face has gone harder, all the vulnerability I glimpsed on the lawn buried under something that looks like it could cut glass. You will stay here tonight, he informs me, not asks, while my people verify your identity. I open my mouth to argue, but he continues as if I have not drawn breath. You have a life, a job, people who will worry, I understand. But until I know exactly who you are and why you were at that location at that specific time, you are not leaving this property. He produces a phone from his pocket, holds it out. Call whoever needs to know you are safe, but you will say nothing about where you are or who you are with. His tone makes it clear this is not negotiable. And when I take the phone, my hands are shaking badly enough that I nearly drop it. I call Catherine while he watches, while his security personnel hover in the background. And I lie to my best friend for the first time in 8 years. I tell her I am fine, that I am staying with someone I met, that I will explain later, but please do not worry. Catherine's voice is tight with concern and confusion, and I hate myself for every word. When I hang up the phone, the father gestures to one of his men who steps forward to escort me upstairs. Your room is prepared, the father says. Marcus will be stationed outside if you need anything, and then his tone shifts into something that might be meant as reassurance, but lands more like a threat. My daughter tells me you are her hero. The little girl, Sophie, is looking at me with eyes too old for her soot-streaked face, and she whispers thank you for saving us. And something in the father's expression cracks just enough for me to see the human underneath. The bedroom is beautiful in the way cages are beautiful when gilded. All silk sheets and heavy furniture that probably costs more than I earn in a year. And I should be grateful for the luxury. But all I can feel is the weight of the lock I heard click on the outside of the door after Marcus left me here. I cannot sleep. My body is exhausted, every muscle aching from carrying the twins and breathing smoke and the adrenaline crash that followed. But my mind spins through everything that happened, the fire and the accusations, and the way Alexander Thornhill looked at me like I was either salvation or threat, possibly both. I explore the room because lying still feels impossible, running my fingers over expensive fabrics and opening drawers that are empty except for tissue paper. And when I pull back the heavy curtains to look at the grounds below, I see them. Bars worked into the window frame with decorative metalwork that almost hides their true purpose. Trapped. I am trapped in a criminal's house because I did the right thing, because I saved 2 children, and the injustice of it burns in my chest alongside fear. At 2 a.m. I hear it, a child's cry that pierces through walls and carpet and the thick door, and every teacher instinct I possess flares to life. I try the door expecting resistance, but it swings open, Marcus nowhere in sight, and I follow the sound down the hallway to a room decorated in soft purples and pinks, where Sophie is sitting up in her bed sobbing with the broken, gasping sounds of a nightmare still clinging to her. I do not think, just move to her side and gather her small body against me, and she burrows into my chest, like she is trying to crawl inside my ribcage to hide from whatever horrors her sleeping mind conjured. I sing softly, something my mother used to sing to me, and rock her gently while stroking her sweat-damp curls. and Lucas wakes in the other small bed, his eyes wide and frightened in the glow of the nightlight shaped like a star. He does not cry, but he watches, and when I reach out a hand, he scrambles from his bed to press against my other side, and now I have both twins clinging to me while I murmur nonsense words of comfort. The bookshelf against the wall is filled with picture books, and I pull one down, something about a brave mouse, and begin to read in the quiet voice I use in my classroom when a child needs calming. The twins relax incrementally, their breathing evening out, and I am so focused on them that I do not notice him in the doorway until I feel the weight of his stare. Alexander Thornhill stands there in the shadows, wearing different clothes than before, dark pants and a shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and his face is unreadable as he watches me with his children. I expect him to order me back to my room, to question why I am here, but instead he enters silently and lowers himself into the upholstered chair in the corner, his movements careful like he is afraid of startling something wild. His presence should frighten me, this dangerous man who holds me prisoner. But instead, something in me settles, recognizes safety in a way that makes no rational sense. I keep reading, turning pages and doing the voices, and the twins grow heavier against me as sleep reclaims them. When I finish the book, Lucas is already unconscious, and Sophie's eyes are fluttering closed, and I ease them back into their beds with the practice of someone who has tucked in countless children, covering them with blankets printed with stars and moons. Alexander rises when I do, and together we leave the room, him pulling the door mostly closed behind us. In the hallway, he stops me with a hand on my arm, gentle but deliberate, and when he speaks, his voice is low and rough with something that sounds like it costs him. Thank you. The words are simple, but they carry weight. And in the dim light, I see past the controlled exterior to the exhaustion beneath, the fear he cannot quite hide, the vulnerability of a father who nearly lost everything. My people verified your identity, he continues, and his thumb moves against my arm in a gesture I do not think he realizes he is making. You are exactly who you claim to be, Clara Whitmore. Kindergarten teacher, no criminal record, no connections to anyone in my world or Colborne's. I should feel relieved, but instead my stomach tightens because I know what comes next. But you cannot leave. The words land like stones. My children have bonded to you in a way they have not with anyone since their mother died, and the threat against them has not passed. I need you to stay, just a few days, until I resolve the situation with Colburn. I should refuse, every instinct of self-preservation screaming that I need to run from this world of violence and criminals and burning safe houses. But I think of Sophie's nightmare and Lucas's wide, frightened eyes, and the way they clung to me like I was the only solid thing in a world gone mad. 3 days, I hear myself say, and his eyebrows rise slightly like he did not expect negotiation. I will stay for 3 days while you handle whatever this is, but then I go back to my life, my apartment, my job, and you forget I exist. Something that might be amusement flickers across his face, a slight curve of his mouth that transforms him for just a moment into someone younger, less burdened. I am unused to people setting terms with me, he says, but agreed, 3 days, and then you are free to go. Morning arrives with the kind of pale gray light that feels like a premonition, and I wake to find Eleanor already in my room laying out clothing she says is more practical than what I own, dark jeans and a plain shirt that will not draw attention, and her efficiency feels like violence, each folded item a countdown to loss. The twins are still sleeping when I check on them, Sophie curled around her stuffed rabbit, and Lucas sprawled like he fell asleep mid-motion, and I memorize their faces in the dawn light because I do not know when I will see Alexander again, do not know if this temporary separation will become permanent. Downstairs, the household moves with military precision, security personnel checking weapons and communications equipment, and James briefs me and Eleanor on protocols with the clipped language of someone who has done this too many times. The safe house is 4 hours north, remote enough that surveillance will be difficult, And we will have a rotating security detail and strict communication windows. No phones, no internet, nothing that can be traced or tracked. I feel myself disappearing even before we leave, erased from my own life. Alexander emerges from his study looking like he has not slept. His face drawn and the wound on his shoulder clearly causing pain, he refuses to acknowledge. And when his eyes find mine across the foyer, something passes between us that feels like drowning. The twins wake and immediately sense the wrongness, clinging to both of us, while we try to explain in words they can understand that they are going on an adventure, that Daddy has work to do, that Clara will be with them the whole time. Sophie cries with the broken sound of a child who has lost too much already, and Lucas asks if the bad men are coming again, his voice so small it cracks my heart clean through. Alexander kneels despite his injury, pulling his children close, and tells them to be brave, to listen to Clara and Eleanor, that he will come for them as soon as the bad men are gone forever. He promises, and I can see what that promise costs him, the way his jaw tightens and his hands shake slightly where they cup their small faces. Then he stands and turns to me, and in front of Eleanor and James and half a dozen security personnel, he crosses the space between us and pulls me against him with his good arm. And the kiss is not gentle or tentative, but claiming, a mark of ownership and promise and desperation all tangled together. When he pulls back, his hand comes up to cup my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone in a gesture that has become familiar, and his voice is rough with emotion barely contained. "Keep them safe," he says, and the words carry weight beyond their simplicity. "Keep them safe and wait for me. However long it takes, whatever happens, I will come for you when this is over. I promise you, Clara. I will find you." His eyes hold mine, and I see everything he cannot say in front of witnesses, all the feelings we have not named, and I nod because words feel impossible past the tightness in my throat. Eleanor touches my elbow, gentle but firm, and the twins take my hands. And we walk toward the SUV waiting in the circular drive while Alexander watches from the doorway like a man watching his heart walk away. The SUV moves through morning traffic and then onto highways that lead away from the city, and I sit in the back seat with Sophie pressed against my left side and Lucas against my right, both of them silent in a way that feels worse than tears, while Eleanor sits in the front passenger seat speaking in low tones to the driver, whose name I learn is Marcus. Not the same Marcus who guarded my door that first night, but another interchangeable security professional in Alexander's endless supply of dangerous men. The twins clutch their stuffed animals, Sophie with her rabbit, and Lucas with a worn tiger, and I hold their hands and try to radiate a calm I do not feel because my heart is still back at the estate with a man who kissed me like he was memorizing the taste of me, who promised to find us but could not promise when or even if he would survive what comes next. The landscape changes as we drive north, suburbs giving way to rural stretches, and I watch out the window and think about how my entire life has been dismantled in less than 2 weeks. My apartment compromised, my job surely lost by now, my best friend questioned by criminals and probably by federal agents too, and all because I ran into a burning building to save 2 children I did not know. I should regret that choice, but when Sophie shifts closer and tucks her head under my chin, I cannot find regret anywhere inside me, only this fierce protective love that has grown impossibly fast, the kind of love that makes you understand why people do foolish, dangerous things. Eleanor turns to look at me, and her expression has shifted from the suspicion of our first meeting to something that might be respect or possibly pity. And she tells me the safe house is fully stocked and secured, that we will have everything we need, that Alexander has arranged for tutoring materials so I can continue teaching the twins. And I hear what she is not saying, that this could be months, that there is no end date, that I am committing to an indefinite exile. We stop once at a rest area, and Marcus insists on accompanying us inside while another security guard I have not been introduced to circles the perimeter. And I take the twins to the bathroom and buy them juice boxes from a vending machine and try to answer Lucas when he asks where we are going. Somewhere safe, I tell him. Somewhere the bad men cannot find you, and he nods like this makes sense, because his short life has already taught him that safety is conditional and locations must be kept secret. Back in the SUV, Sophie falls asleep against me, and Lucas stares out the window. And Eleanor makes a phone call that consists mostly of affirmative sounds, and then tells Marcus something has changed. We are going to a different location, secondary protocols. And my stomach tightens, because in Alexander's world, changed plans mean new threats. We turn off the highway onto smaller roads that wind through forest, the trees pressing close on both sides. And I think about how easy it would be to disappear here, how many places there are to hide bodies or secrets. And I hate that my mind goes to such dark places now, that I have learned to think like someone in Alexander's world. The safe house when we finally arrive is not the rustic cabin I half expected, but a modern structure of glass and steel tucked into the hillside, beautiful and isolated. And Marcus does a full sweep before allowing us inside while Eleanor stands with her hand resting on something under her jacket that I know is a weapon. The interior is cold perfection, all clean lines and expensive furniture, and there is a bedroom for the twins with 2 beds and stuffed animals already arranged on the pillows, someone having prepared for their arrival, and a separate room for me and another for Eleanor. And downstairs a playroom stocked with toys and books and art supplies, Alexander having thought of everything except how to make this feel less like a prison. That first night I tuck the twins into bed, and they ask when they will see their daddy again, and I lie and say soon, very soon. And I sing until they sleep, and then I go downstairs and find Eleanor on the terrace that overlooks dark forest. And she offers me the glass of wine in her hand, and I take it, and drink, and wait for her to speak. She tells me Alexander is making a mistake cooperating with the Federals, that his organization will never forgive betrayal, that even with immunity, he will spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder. And I ask if she thinks he should run instead, and she laughs, bitter and sharp, and says he should have killed Colburn years ago when he had the chance. That mercy is weakness in their world. But Alexander has always been too soft, too human, too burdened by conscience. I do not know how to respond to this assessment of the man I have come to love, this man who is apparently remarkable among criminals for having a conscience. And Eleanor looks at me, and something in her expression shifts to almost gentle. He cares for you, she says, more than is wise, more than is safe, and that makes you a liability, but also leverage. And I need you to understand that when this is over, if he survives, you will have to choose whether you can live in his world permanently, because he will not let you go now, not after everything. The words settle over me like a sentence, and I think about my small apartment, and my kindergarten classroom, and my simple, safe life that seems like it belonged to someone else, some other Clara, who did not know what it felt like to love a man who kills to protect what is his, who did not know the weight of children's trust or the taste of goodbye kisses. And I realize I already made my choice days ago, maybe the moment I ran into that burning building. Maybe the moment Alexander first touched me and I felt recognition rather than fear. Days settle into a rhythm at the safe house that feels both peaceful and suffocating, and I wake each morning to mist hanging in the valleys below and the twins climbing into my bed before dawn, their small, warm bodies burrowing against me like they are afraid I might disappear if they let go, and I hold them and wonder if Alexander is awake too in whatever secure location he occupies. If he thinks of us the way I think of him constantly, an ache that has taken up permanent residence behind my ribs. Eleanor has softened incrementally, teaching me to play chess in the evenings after the twins sleep, and over the board she tells me stories about Alexander before, when his wife was alive and he smiled more, when he still believed he could keep his family separate from his work, and I hear the affection beneath her clinical tone, the loyalty that runs deeper than employment or obligation. The twins ask about their father every day, and I run out of ways to say soon without lying outright. So instead, I redirect them to lessons and games, teaching Sophie to write her name in careful letters and helping Lucas build elaborate block towers that he destroys with sound effects that make Eleanor wince. And in these small domestic moments, I can almost forget that we are hiding, that men with guns patrol the perimeter, that somewhere Alexander is testifying against people who would kill him for his betrayal. On day 9, Marcus brings news that the first trial has begun, that Alexander spent 6 hours on the stand, that Colburn's lawyers tried to destroy his credibility, but the evidence is overwhelming. Financial records and shipping manifests and recorded conversations, a decade of criminal enterprise laid bare in federal court, and I think about Alexander sitting in that witness box, target painted bright and permanent, doing this so his children can have the normal life his choices stole from them. That night, the twins are restless, Sophie having another nightmare about fire and Lucas waking from it too. And I sit between their beds singing every lullaby I know until my voice goes rough, and when I finally return to my room, I find Eleanor waiting with a bottle of wine and 2 glasses, and she pours and hands me one and tells me that Alexander called on the secure line, that he asked about the children, and then, after a pause that Eleanor describes as telling, he asked about me. I want to know what he said, but Eleanor just shakes her head and tells me he is holding together but barely, that testifying is breaking something in him. Not fear, but shame, having to speak aloud every compromise and crime, every choice that led him deeper into his father's world. And I realize that Alexander is not just fighting for his children's freedom, but for some kind of absolution, some way to balance the scales before he disappears into witness protection and becomes someone new. The next morning, I take the twins into the garden that surrounds the safe house, and Sophie finds a bird's nest in a low branch and demands I lift her to see inside. And when I do, she reports 3 eggs, pale blue and perfect. And Lucas wants to touch them, but I explain we have to leave them alone so the mother can come back. And he asks what happens if the mother does not come back. And I tell him that someone else will take care of the babies, that there is always someone who will protect them, and I feel the weight of that promise settle over me like a vow. Later, while the twins nap, I sit on the terrace with the secure phone in my hand, the one that can only call 2 numbers, one to Eleanor's phone, and one to a number I am not supposed to use except in emergency. And I stare at it and think about Alexander's voice, how I am forgetting the exact timbre of it, how memory is already smoothing him into something less real, and my finger hovers over the call button, but I do not press it, because what would I say? That I miss him, that I am afraid, that I have fallen in love with him and his children. And this was never supposed to happen. I was just a teacher who ran into a burning building, and now I am here in this beautiful prison, waiting for a man who might never come. On the 14th day at the safe house, I wake to find Sophie standing beside my bed, with tears streaming down her face. And when I pull her close and ask what is wrong, she tells me she is forgetting what her daddy looks like, that she tried to remember his face and could not. And the confession breaks something inside me because I understand exactly what she means. Memory becoming unreliable, details smoothing into impression rather than precision. I gather both twins that morning, and we look through the photo album that Alexander packed for them, pictures of him pushing them on swings and reading bedtime stories and laughing at some moment now lost to time. And Sophie traces her finger over his face, like she is committing it to memory again, and Lucas asks when he is coming, and I have run out of ways to say I do not know. Eleanor finds me later in the kitchen staring at nothing, and she pours coffee and sits across from me and tells me that the second trial starts in 3 days, that Alexander will testify again, that each appearance increases the danger, but also moves closer to the end. And I ask what the end looks like, and she says new identities, relocation, a life built on lies and constant vigilance. And I realize she is preparing me for a future where Alexander and the twins disappear into witness protection, and I return to my apartment and my classroom and pretend none of this happened. The thought is unbearable. That afternoon, I take the twins into the forest that surrounds the safe house, Marcus trailing at a discreet distance, and we follow a stream and build a dam from rocks and sticks. And Sophie finds a frog and names it Henry. And Lucas asks if we can keep it, and I explain that Henry has a family waiting for him. And the parallel is not lost on me, this conversation about belonging and home and the people who wait for us. We stay out until the sun begins to set, and the air turns cold. And when we return to the house, Eleanor meets us at the door with an expression I cannot read. And she tells me Alexander called, that he asked to speak to me, that he is on the secure line now waiting. My heart stops and then races, and I follow her to the office where the phone sits on the desk, and I pick it up with shaking hands and say his name. And when he responds, his voice is rough, like he has not slept, and just the sound of it unravels me. He asks about the children, and I tell him they are well, that Sophie is reading simple words now, and Lucas can count to 50. And Alexander makes a sound that might be a laugh or a sob, and then silence stretches between us filled with everything we cannot say. And finally, he tells me the trials are going faster than expected, that Colborne's organization is collapsing, that 2 more weeks and it might be finished. And I ask what happens then, and he says he does not know, that the prosecutors are negotiating his placement, that he might have some choice in location but not much. I ask if he thinks about us, and he says every moment of every day, that knowing we are safe is the only thing keeping him standing in that courtroom speaking his sins aloud. And I tell him we are waiting, that however long it takes we will be here. And Alexander says my name like a prayer or a curse and tells me I should not wait, that I should go back to my life while I still can. But his voice contradicts his words, and I understand he needs me to wait even as he tries to set me free. I tell Alexander that I will wait as long as it takes, the words feeling both like a promise and a surrender. And he kisses me once more, hard and possessive, before stepping back and becoming the composed crime lord again, his mask sliding into place as he issues final instructions to James about security protocols and check-in schedules. The twins do not understand why their father cannot come with us, and Sophie cries so hard she makes herself sick, and I hold her hair back while she vomits and wipe her face with a cool cloth and tell her that her daddy has important work to finish, but he loves her more than anything in the world. And I see Alexander watching from the doorway with such anguish in his eyes that I have to look away, or I will break too. The drive to the safe house takes 4 hours, winding through mountains into remote territory where cell service cuts out and the roads turn to gravel. And Eleanor sits in the front with Marcus, who drives while I occupy the back seat with a twin on each side, both of them silent now, exhausted from crying, their small hands gripping mine like lifelines. The safe house turns out to be a cabin, rustic but comfortable, perched on a ridge with views of endless forest. And Marcus does a security sweep while Eleanor checks the supplies, and I take the twins inside and help them choose bedrooms, though they both insist on sharing one room, afraid to be separated even for sleep. That first night, I lie awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the wilderness, wind through pines and distant animal calls. And I think about Alexander alone in his mansion, or maybe already meeting with prosecutors, speaking truths that will unravel his entire world. And I wonder if he is thinking of us too, if the separation cuts him the way it cuts me, this physical ache of absence. Morning brings routine, the only weapon I have against chaos, so I make breakfast and sit with the twins and we talk about what we will do today. And Lucas wants to explore outside, but Eleanor vetoes it until Marcus completes a full perimeter check. So instead, we do lessons at the kitchen table, simple math and letter writing. And Sophie draws a picture of the 4 of us, her and Lucas and me and Alexander, all holding hands under a smiling sun. And the image breaks my heart because it is everything we cannot have. Days blur into each other, measured by meals and lessons and bedtime stories, and Eleanor proves surprisingly capable with the children, reading to them in the evenings while I prepare dinner, and sometimes I catch her watching me with an expression I cannot decipher, something like pity mixed with respect, and I wonder what she sees, whether she thinks I am brave or merely stupid for loving a man like Alexander Thornhill. On day 6, Marcus brings news from the outside world that Alexander has begun cooperating with federal authorities, that Colborne has been arrested along with 12 of his top lieutenants, that the port operations are being seized and dismantled, and I feel relief and terror in equal measure because each step forward is also a step toward an ending I cannot predict. A future where Alexander and his children disappear into witness protection, and I return to my small apartment and my kindergarten classroom and try to forget any of this happened. I watch Alexander standing in the doorway of my bedroom at dawn, his face haggard from sleeplessness and strategy and the weight of decisions no father should have to make. And when he tells me that Colborne has leaked everything to federal authorities, I feel the ground shift beneath me because I understand what this means. That Alexander's world is collapsing inward like a dying star, that everything he built and inherited and maintained through force and fear is about to be exposed in courtrooms and newspapers and federal databases. He explains his options in that measured voice he uses when emotions run too high to show, running or fighting, disappearing into shadow or stepping into light. And I see the calculation behind his eyes as he weighs his children's future against his own survival. And when he asks what I think he should do, I am stunned, because men like Alexander Thornhill do not ask kindergarten teachers for counsel on matters of criminal empire and federal prosecution. I tell him the truth, that Sophie and Lucas deserve childhoods not spent looking over their shoulders, that they deserve schools and friends and birthday parties and all the ordinary magic of growing up without fear. And Alexander nods slowly, like I have confirmed something he already knew but needed to hear spoken aloud. He sits on the edge of my bed, close enough that I can see the fine lines around his eyes and the silver threading through his dark hair and the exhaustion carved into every angle of his face. And he tells me that if he cooperates, he will have to testify for months or maybe years, that Colborne and the other families will want him dead, that witness protection means erasing everything they are and becoming strangers to themselves. I reach for his hand without thinking, and our fingers lace together with the ease of repetition, though we have touched like this only a handful of times. And I ask if the deal includes immunity, and he says yes, full immunity in exchange for complete cooperation. His freedom purchased with the betrayal of everyone he has ever worked with, or commanded, or protected. The word betrayal sits between us heavy and complex because I know enough now to understand that Alexander's world operates on codes older than law, that cooperation with federal authorities marks him as something worse than criminal, makes him traitor and informant, and oath breaker. And men have died for less in the shadows where he has spent his adult life. He tells me the prosecutors want him to begin immediately, that they are preparing safe houses and security details and witness schedules, that within 72 hours he will be in federal custody, giving depositions and statements and testimony, and I feel time collapsing. These last hours together evaporating like morning fog, and I want to ask him what happens to us, but the question seems selfish when measured against his children's safety and his own survival. Alexander turns to face me fully and cups my face with his free hand, his thumb tracing the curve of my cheekbone in a gesture that has become familiar. And he tells me he is sorry, that he never meant to drag me into his war, that I deserve a man who can give me normal things like dinner dates and weekend trips, and a future without fear. I tell him I stopped wanting normal the moment I walked into that burning building, that some choices change us in ways we cannot undo, and Alexander closes his eyes like my words cause him physical pain. The next 48 hours transform the mansion into a war room, where men in dark suits come and go at all hours, and Alexander spends more time on secure phone lines than he does sleeping. And I watch the careful architecture of his criminal empire begin to dismantle itself piece by piece as he feeds information to prosecutors who sit in his study, taking notes and recording testimony, while Eleanor paces outside like a caged wolf, her fury at his cooperation radiating through every rigid line of her body. She corners me in the kitchen on the second morning and tells me this is my fault, that Alexander would never have considered cooperating if not for his need to protect me along with his children. And though her words are meant to wound, they only confirm what I already suspected, that I have become another vulnerability in a life that cannot afford weakness. The twins sense the tension humming through the house and become clingy and fractious, Sophie waking with nightmares every few hours, and Lucas refusing to eat. And I spend my days maintaining routines that feel increasingly absurd, reading picture books about friendly animals while armed men patrol the hallways, and Alexander signs documents that will send dozens of people to prison. He finds me in stolen moments between meetings, pulling me into empty rooms for kisses that taste like desperation and goodbye. His hands framing my face like he is trying to memorize the shape of me. And he tells me about the deal in fragments, how the prosecutors want his testimony against Colborne and the Vinici family and the Eastern European syndicate that controls the waterfront, how they are offering full immunity in exchange for cooperation that will take months or possibly years, trials stacked one after another like dominoes waiting to fall. I ask the question that has been burning in my chest since he first mentioned witness protection, whether the program includes me, and Alexander goes very still before answering that witness protection is only for immediate family members, legal dependents, spouses, and I am none of those things, just a kindergarten teacher who happened to save his children and got tangled in the wreckage of his collapsing world. The knowledge that I will lose them settles into my bones like winter cold, this ache of future absence. And that night when the twins are finally asleep, I lock myself in the bathroom and cry as quietly as possible, while Catherine leaves voicemail after voicemail begging me to come home, telling me the men watching my apartment have disappeared and federal agents have assured her I am not in trouble, that I can leave whenever I want, and the cruel irony is that she is right. I could walk out the front door right now and return to my life, but the thought of leaving Sophie and Lucas and Alexander feels like cutting off a limb, necessary for survival perhaps, but crippling nonetheless. On the evening of the second day, James discovers encrypted communications between someone inside the house and an unknown external contact. Messages that detail security protocols and Alexander's meeting schedules, proof that someone close to him has been feeding intelligence to enemies who want him dead, and the household erupts into paranoid lockdown with Eleanor subjecting her own people to interrogation and staff members confined to their quarters under guard, while Alexander walks through his home with eyes gone cold and dangerous, trusting no one. I am in the playroom with the twins when Lucas asks to use the bathroom, and I tell him to hurry back, and when 10 minutes pass with no sign of him, I go searching and find his bathroom empty, his bedroom empty, the hall outside vacant, except for a guard who swears the boy never passed him, and my heart begins to hammer against my ribs as I call Lucas's name with increasing panic, while Sophie trails behind me, asking where her brother went. The house transforms into chaos within minutes, Alexander appearing from nowhere to coordinate search teams, while I run from room to room opening closets and checking under beds, with hands that will not stop shaking. And it is Sophie who finally remembers their secret hiding place, the storage closet off the library, where they play cave explorers. And we find Lucas there curled in the dark with a flashlight and a pile of toy dinosaurs, completely oblivious to the terror he has caused. And Alexander pulls his son into his arms with such force I hear Lucas squeak in protest. That night, after the children are bathed and fed and finally sleeping, Alexander comes to my room still dressed in the clothes he has worn for 2 days straight, his face haggard with exhaustion and decisions that are breaking him apart from the inside, and he tells me he is sending the twins away in the morning to a secure location in the mountains where they will wait under Eleanor's protection until the trials are finished and witness protection is arranged. And before I can ask, he adds that I am going with them because the twins need me, and because he cannot do what needs to be done while worrying that I might be used against him. Morning comes too fast and cruel, the kind of dawn that arrives not with soft light, but with the harsh clarity of endings, and I move through the motions of packing bags for Sophie and Lucas, while my hands shake and my chest feels hollow, because I know what this day means, that everything we have built in these stolen weeks is about to fracture into before and after. The twins sense something wrong in the way children always do, their usual morning energy subdued as they cling to both Alexander and me with unusual desperation. And Sophie keeps asking why we have to go to a new house, and Lucas refuses to eat his breakfast until Alexander sits with him and coaxes bites of toast past his trembling lips. James briefs us in the foyer while armed men load bags into two black SUVs, his voice professional and distant as he outlines the route to the safe house in the mountains, 4 hours north through back roads and security checkpoints, a location so remote that cell service barely reaches, and the nearest town is 30 minutes away. And I understand this is not temporary sanctuary, but exile, a place to wait while Alexander does the dangerous work of testifying and surviving and dismantling everything he has ever known. Eleanor joins us dressed for travel, her expression still carrying traces of anger at Alexander's cooperation, but also something softer when she looks at the twins, and I realize she has known these children since birth, that she is losing them too in her own way. Alexander kneels before Sophie and Lucas in the marble foyer, where I first entered his world, and the sight of this powerful, dangerous man, making himself small for his children, breaks something in me that was already cracked, and he tells them to be brave, to listen to Clara and Eleanor, that he will come for them as soon as the bad men are gone forever, and his voice stays steady even as Sophie begins to cry, and Lucas asks in that heartbreaking way of 4-year-olds if the bad men are coming again. Alexander cups his son's face and promises that he will stop them, that he will make sure they can never hurt anyone again, and I hear the vow beneath the words, the willingness to do whatever violence or testimony or sacrifice is required to give his children the freedom he never had. Then he stands and turns to me, and in front of James and Eleanor and the security team and his crying children, Alexander pulls me close with both hands framing my face, and he kisses me not with the desperate secrecy of our stolen moments, but with open claiming, a public declaration that I belong to him, and he to me, regardless of legal definitions or witness protection protocols. When he breaks the kiss, his forehead rests against mine, and his voice comes rough and raw with emotion barely contained, and he tells me to keep his children safe, to be for them what he cannot be while he does what must be done. And then he adds words that will sustain me through everything coming, that I should wait for him because however long it takes, however many trials or threats or years, he will find us when this is finished. And the promise hangs in the air between us, solid as any vow spoken in churches or courtrooms, and I nod because I cannot speak past the grief blocking my throat. And then Eleanor is ushering us toward the waiting SUV, and Sophie is screaming for her daddy, and I am carrying Lucas, who has gone rigid with fear, and the last thing I see before the vehicle door closes is Alexander standing alone in his fortress, watching the only things he loves disappear down the driveway. And I understand